For many years, the rich countries of the world have taken the food on their plates for granted. A trip to the supermarket and it's all there. Food from every corner of the world. But now there are warning signs that it is all about to change.
I view the challenge on the food front as perhaps the leading challenge facing humanity today.
In the last 2 years, there have been dramatic spikes in food prices, even sparking riots on 3 continents.
Future wars might be fought around food and water, as opposed to, say, oil and territory.
Diminishing natural resources and rising demand from an exploding world population means food could be in increasingly short supply.
There's every reason to be quite worried about food security for the world.
In today's global economy, consumers in rich countries have grown used to a limitless choice of food from across the world. Local markets have been replaced by global ones, and food has become a commodity. Ridley Road Market in London, England, is a perfect example of our global food chain. There's a huge range here, everything under the sun. And not just the British sun, the Mediterranean sun, the African sun, the South American sun. Produce from across the world is being sold on this local English market. Mirroring shops and supermarkets across the globe, this scene of plenty, according to experts like Tim Lang, cannot last.
The nightmare scenario is that there will be food wars, there will be scarcity wars, there'll be resource wars, there's fighting for minerals, for the fertilizers, there's oil running out, there's climate change coming. I think the party's over. The capacity of the world to produce as much abundantly as it has done is beginning to be squeezed. Unless we change how we grow food, how we eat it, what we eat, how much we're prepared to pay for it, we're walking into crisis.
I view the challenge on the food front as perhaps the leading challenge facing humanity today.
Lester Brown is the founder and president of the influential campaign group, the Earth Policy Institute, and has been an environmental and agricultural analyst for 50 years.
During the last half of the last century, the number of hungry people in the world was declining. And then what happened was that after 2000, the number of hungry people in the world stopped declining and began increasing. In the last 2 years, it's gone up fairly substantially.
The predictions are that a looming food crisis will affect rich and poor countries alike.
I think food security, even for those of us living in affluent countries, is going to become an issue because it's going to take more and more of our income to feed ourselves. In the U.S., we've become accustomed to rather cheap food over the years, and that's beginning to change. We're in trouble. I think more and more people sense that now.
But what's changed? Why are we facing this looming crisis? The world's population has doubled over the last 40 years to almost 7 billion. And just at the time when the population is set to swell by a further 2 billion, questions have been raised about the ability of modern agriculture to keep up with demand. It is estimated that if we carry on farming using today's techniques and with yields at today's levels, then by 2050, we will need to double the amount of food we grow. This increase would require new farming land the size of Brazil to produce enough food to feed the world.
The expectation is that crop prices could be, on average, some 40% higher than the long-term trends to date.
Richard Warburton has to consider predictions of future food prices as the head of the UK's largest agribusiness consultancy.
There's a finite amount of land, and that finite amount of usable arable land will not support a doubling in food production through to 2050. I think policymakers, government, are starting to realise there's a correlation between food security and political economic stability. I don't think it's too far-fetched to think that future wars might be fought around food and water as opposed to, say, oil and territory.
This isn't some nightmare future scenario. Many experts say that we have already seen the early tremors of the crisis to come. Poor global harvests in 2007 pushed an extra 40 million people into hunger. In 2008, people in poorer countries across the world took to the streets. They had a common cause. Food prices were rising so fast that millions of people could no longer afford the food in their shops. This has been seen by many as a warning that food shortages in years to come will cause more political and economic insecurity. So what are the key factors pushing up food prices now and in the future? Many believe that one of the biggest factors is climate change. Dr. Rajendra Pachauri accepted the Nobel Peace Prize on behalf of his organization, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, in 2007.
There's a whole range of impacts that are associated with climate change, and these would have differential impacts in different parts of the world. In the case of, say, the United Kingdom, extreme events, including droughts, floods, huge quantities of rainfall in a short period of time, are certainly going to have a major impact on the production of food. In the case of India, we've estimated that every 1 degree increase in temperature could lead to 5 to 10% reduction in yields. As early as 2020, several countries in Africa are likely to suffer a decline in yields of some crops by up to 50%.
The effects of climate change on our food supplies are predicted to be felt soon and could be far-reaching.
Worldwide, we're not going to have enough food to feed all the people. The first thing that will happen is that prices will increase. There would be periods when perhaps what they want to eat may not even be available. So there's every reason to be quite worried about food security for the world.
Climate change forecasts can seem like disconnected predictions of doom for a faraway time. But for some, climate change is already a reality, a struggle to get from one day to the next. Droughts in parts of Kenya have been 4 times more common in the last 25 years. The country has just suffered its 3rd failed harvest in a row, and the worst drought in more than a decade. Some of the worst hit have been the Maasai people, who have herded livestock in this part of the world for centuries.